you? What for, dude?
Turn around.
Are you kidding me?
Turn around.
What does that say? Oh!
Wrong guy.
Oh!
Wrong guy.
Police officers are supposed to uphold law and order by detecting, preventing, and investigating crimes.
You're under arrest for disorderly conduct, sir.
But what happens when they overstep their boundaries and target soldiers, trying to arrest the very heroes who protect our nation?
I wasn't stepping up to you, sir.
Sit down. Sit down.
This is not something out of movies, it's reality, and we have compiled a whole list of stories that will leave you shaking your head. So let's get in and see the unbelievable stories of idiot cops who tried arresting soldiers. Number 1. Arrest of a disabled veteran. On October 13th, 2021, Joshua Rohrer, a disabled Army veteran who served in the Army National Guard in Iraq, was arrested by 2 police officers. Here is how it happened. Officer Maurice found Joshua at an intersection where he usually came to accept help from strangers. The officer warned Joshua to stay away from the intersection. Officer Maurice showed up again as his colleague called him to the scene. The Army veteran was again at the intersection, accepting aid from strangers. This is where the whole interaction got heated. The officers placed Joshua under arrest after he failed to show the police his state ID. The loyal dog, Sunshine Ray, sensing his owner's distress, came after the police officers. Officer Maurice quite brutally taxed the poor animal. Throughout the body cam footage, the poor veteran can be heard saying, "Where's my dog?" in an anguished manner. The charges against Rohrer were later dismissed. How brutal of the officers for disrespecting the veterans like Joshua. Number 2. Cops overstepping their boundaries. While on a hiking trip in Texas, Army Master Sergeant C.J. Grisham and his 15-year-old son were interrupted by cops who were clearly overstepping their boundaries. The soldier was carrying an assault rifle with him for hunting. Officers stopped and arrested him without any provocation. In addition to that, the weapon was removed from his possession without consent. How he must have felt when his peaceful hike turned into a legal confrontation. The whole ordeal was captured on camera by the 15-year-old under his father's guidance. Keep in mind, people, that carrying a shotgun or rifle is legal in the state of Texas, provided that you do not threaten anyone or cause alarm due to your weapon. A lawsuit was filed against the police department by Grisham. The trial concluded in March of 2017, when the questionable arrest was ruled to be completely legal. However, the nature of this case has started a big debate about how police enforce laws and people's rights. Many netizens have questioned the integrity of this ruling. What are your thoughts? Number 3. Federal agent investigating the police department gets arrested by cops. Special Agent Hatton was investigating the corruption in the Franklin County Police Department when things took a turn when he was arrested by a cop. How strange would it be that a cop arrests the very agent probing corruption within his own department? The agent had called Officer Ralph Gordon on his personal phone number to meet him in a parking lot and perhaps ask questions related to the case. The officer did not like the fact that the agent had accessed his personal phone number instead of going through his department and grew apprehensive of him even after the agent confirmed his identity. The officer then detained Agent Hatton based on a lousy claim of him being unable to prove his position as an FBI agent, when in fact, the officer was the one who refused to look at any registration. Jokes on the officer. Supervisors soon arrived at the scene, and their treatment of the agent was even worse than Officer Gordon's. Even after receiving explicit confirmation about Agent Hatton's identity, the officers held him in a police car with no AC or windows rolled down. He was finally released once he stated that he was experiencing shortness of breath and vision loss. Luckily, he sustained no permanent damage. Number 4. Hit and arrest. We've heard of many hit-and-run cases, but have you ever heard of a hit and arrest? Officer Ryan Wingo, on the 10th of May 2019, chased after a red car that had allegedly been overspeeding and honking at him. The driver slammed the brakes and pulled over to the side of the road once the police car started chasing him. The officer could not stop the police cruiser on time and bumped into the red car. The The officer made a bizarre arrest after asking the car to pull into the parking lot. After hearing one too many cuss words, Officer Ryan lost his cool and arrested the veteran Charles. The soldier paid his fines and tried to move on for the time being. Later, Charles and his wife filed a civil suit against Officer Ryan for corrupt practices. The outcome of the case is unknown to this day. Anyways, it's clear who was in the wrong. Number 5, police officer on a power trip. In 2017, Officer Johan Mulero responded to reports of someone yelling at passing vehicles and pedestrians. The man in question was 67-year-old Alan Kidd. Right from the start, the police officer's behavior was extremely rude and hostile. The officer, who was clearly on a power trip, grabbed the veteran by the collar and pushed him backward. He also yelled at the man to sit on the ground. Officer Mulero loses his temper when he's asked by the veteran why he's pushing him around and being rude for no reason, to which he responds by saying, "I don't like people not following my orders." At the conclusion of this bizarre statement, Officer Johan makes the arrest quite aggressively. Kidd was placed in custody for 2 days for resisting arrest without violence. As the arrest was made without any legal basis, a year later, Mulero was terminated once the body cam footage was released. If you think this arrest was unjust, wait until you see the other items on our list. Number 6. Retired Army Ranger arrested over filming a crime scene. Under the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, freedom of speech and freedom of the press are fundamental rights. When O'Shea Jackson, a retired Army Ranger, stopped his car to film a traffic stop, he was exercising these rights within his legal boundaries. However, law enforcement did not share this view. In accordance with the protections provided by the First Amendment, Mr. Jackson's act of recording the traffic stop aligns with the freedoms granted to individuals to document police interactions using clear video and audio, as long as they maintain a reasonable distance of 10 feet. He was arrested by the police and charged with obstruction. Jackson lost this case against him. However, he claims that the court has not found him guilty of his actions. Number 7, visually impaired veteran gets harassed. A visually impaired veteran, Mike Nelson, was assaulted when he walked into Guilford County Health Department on February 4, 2020. Mike was there to gather information on the department's reproductive and mental health services. During a civil conversation, Officer Robertson from Guilford County Security began behaving rather rudely. He asked Mike to leave the building as he was not there on any official business. After Mike refused to do so, he turned Mike's camera away from himself. Mike is a visually impaired war veteran who uses his camera as an assistive device. Other officers present at the scene also tried to coerce Mike into turning off his recording device. After the veteran's adamant refusal to turn off his recording device, the officers threw him onto the ground and handcuffed him. They then threw him into a wheelchair, which allegedly broke his neck. Mike was charged with second-degree trespassing and resisting. Number 8. Navy veteran awaiting Uber gets arrested. 53-year-old Navy veteran James was peacefully waiting for an Uber to pick him up after a night out at the bar when he was arrested by an officer from the Wheat Ridge Police Department. The officer's reaction to this entire situation is rather peculiar, as James does not seem to be doing anything unlawful. The officer then arrests James even after he calmly explains the entire situation to the cop. James can repeatedly be heard saying, "Why are you messing with me?" indicating that even in his intoxicated state, James can see the situation for what it is. Absolutely absurd. At last, James was released when his Uber arrived, and he and the police officers parted ways amicably. At number 9, Black Army lieutenant faces harassment. Karen Nazario is a Black and Latino Army lieutenant. He sued 2 Virginia police officers after a traffic stop in December 2022, where he was held at gunpoint, pepper sprayed, and handcuffed despite having temporary plates on his vehicle. The officers cited dark window tints and delayed compliance as reasons for the aggressive stop. Nazario was handcuffed and interrogated while waiting for paramedics to treat his eyes after being pepper sprayed. But he was not arrested, according to his lawsuit. In June 2024, a jury awarded Nazario $3,685 in damages for assault and an illegal search but found the officers not guilty of false imprisonment. The incident, which was captured on video, sparked discussions about police conduct and racial profiling. Number 10. A case of mistaken identity. In May 2022, police received reports of a domestic violence incident and promptly arrived at the scene for a wellness check. On their arrival at the house, the police displayed extremely rude behavior and used disrespectful language while referring to Sierra's wife. Sierra, who was an army sergeant, did not like this fact, and he made his displeasure known. Throughout the whole exchange, one of the officers subjected the family to verbal humiliation and resorted to using derogatory insults. The other officer at the scene tried to de-escalate the situation to the best of their ability, but the damage had already been done. Turns out that the police had shown up at the wrong address to perform their wellness check. A simple miscommunication resulted in an innocent family being humiliated and an officer being fired. Quite a sticky situation, right? Number 11. Case of mistaken identity, or is it racism? Cops in Rochester, Minnesota put a South Sudanese man under arrest based on a hunch. The man being detained is extremely calm under the alarming circumstances. He's extremely confident and even goes as far as to accuse the police of racial profiling. The police put this man under arrest based on the assumption that he looked similar to a suspect that they were looking for. The man repeatedly assures the police that he is not who they are looking for. During the arrest, things escalated when one of the officers tried to grab him. The man seemed to be enjoying this as he asked the cops to just take a look at his ID. The cops were in for a shock of a lifetime. The man is an FBI agent, present right here in the middle of a local law enforcement activity, and the cops are in big trouble. The cops immediately turned sheepish and refused eye contact. Guilty and cocky is an incredibly dangerous combination, as these cops have just demonstrated. Number 12. Agent faces police brutality despite having a medical condition. On July 7, 2020, Agent James Burke was dispatched to a home in Ohio in order to confiscate a shotgun from a resident who was not permitted to own a firearm. The homeowners were uncooperative and called the cops on Burke. This was no big deal as the agent was used to this verification process. But the behavior of the on-duty officers was one that Burke did not expect. The officers arrived on the scene with arms drawn and arrested the agent in a very aggressive manner. Throughout the body cam footage, the agent can be heard screaming at the officers that he has a medical condition. The condition was never specified. In addition to the aggressive arrest, they also used a taser on him multiple times throughout the arrest, despite his cooperation. Burke later filed a lawsuit against the Columbus Police Department and the two officers. A lot of drama and hurt could have been avoided if the officers had just been a bit cooperative. What are your thoughts on the matter? Number 13. Police in Turana arrest KDF soldiers for slapping and disarming colleague. In a usually calm Turana town, a routine roadblock turned into a showdown that no one saw coming. When KDF soldiers in a water bowser got stuck at a roadblock, things quickly got heated. The officer at the roadblock was slow to remove the spikes, and the KDF soldiers lost their patience. One soldier got out, slapped the officer, and took his rifle. Another soldier cocked the gun and made a threatening remark. That can happen only in Turana for sure. But the police didn't waste time. They tracked the water bowser to Moy Garden. You can only imagine the scene when shots are fired into the air. Finally, the KDF soldiers surrendered. The soldiers refused to say who they were, so they were booked as unknown. The incident caused a huge scene and even disrupted the nearby court proceedings. The police report said the KDF officers will be charged with robbery with violence. Number 14. Over a dozen military officers arrested in Sierra Leone over failed coup. Now let's talk about a failed coup attempt in Sierra Leone that shook the usually peaceful capital city of Freetown. Early Sunday morning, residents were startled by heavy gunfire as attackers targeted the main military barracks and prisons in an attempt to overthrow the government. The attackers broke into the key armory near the presidential villa, causing chaos. The government swiftly responded, arresting 13 military officers and 1 civilian involved in the attack. Information Minister Turana confirmed the arrests, calling it a failed coup. This incident comes just months after President Julius Maada Bio's contested re-election, adding to the political tensions in the region already hit by multiple coups since 2020. The gunshots were heard again on Tuesday as security forces pursued suspects. More than 100 escaped inmates have returned, but many attackers are still at large. The Chief of Defense Staff, Lieutenant General Peter Lavahoon, told the briefing. Number 15. Georgia Sheriff and City Sergeant threatened to arrest each other. In this video from about a year ago, a sheriff and a city sergeant are caught in a heated argument. The argument stems from an alleged illegal traffic stop. The footage shows the sergeant approaching the sheriff's vehicle, clearly agitated. The conversation gets heated quickly, with both men accusing each other of misconduct. The sergeant can be heard demanding the sheriff identify himself and explain the reason for the traffic stop. And the sheriff, he retorts that he pulled the sergeant over for a broken taillight. As if the thing couldn't get humorous, they started exchanging threats. The sergeant warns the sheriff that he will be placed under arrest if he does not comply. The sheriff counters that the sergeant will be arrested if he does not back down. However, it remained unclear as to who arrested whom or whether this argument resulted in any conclusion at all. Whatever that was, this scene was quite an entertainment. Number 16. Police pull over state attorney. Have you ever seen law pulling over the law? If not, you will see that now. This incident occurred in Florida. While the cause for the stop remains unclear, the body cam footage reveals a heated exchange between the officers and the attorney. The attorney seems frustrated and argues that she was improperly stopped. But the cop defends with, "Oh, we run tags all the time." And it is pretty wild considering how casually he mentions breaking the law and rules of his job. The attorney played an Uno reverse by asking them if they had cards on them. She was clearly about not violating any laws and also acknowledged the stop appeared to be legal. Number 17. Dumb cops arrest FBI agents, so the cops pull over a vehicle for having red and blue lights on his vehicle. But when they approach the car, things take a sharp turn. The folks inside flash some badges and claim to be FBI. He claims he's a private investigator and a contractor for Southwest Gas, but the officer isn't buying it and suspects he's impersonating a cop. Typical cops thing, right? For obvious reasons, the cops remain skeptical and demand to see some ID. The officer finds a badge that says Federal Bureau of Investigation and decides to handcuff the man. While all this was happening, 3 cops were standing around Googling the law. Is that good or embarrassing? The alleged FBI agents argue that they don't need to pull over for flashing lights and that the cops have no right to search their vehicle. The cops continue to challenge their claims, and one officer even threatens to arrest them for impersonating a federal officer. But who were they really? FBI or imposters? What do you think? Number 18. Soldier getting arrested on weapons charges. It began with a 911 call reporting a car crash. Upon arrival, officers found the vehicle and conducted a traffic stop. The driver, 21-year-old Johan Roby, was wearing a tactical vest with an AR-15 rifle clearly visible inside the car. After securing Roby, officers searched the vehicle and found a large Ziploc bag containing what looked like explosives. The St. Lucie County Sheriff's Bomb Squad was called in and safely rendered the device. Roby now faces multiple charges, including planting a hoax bomb and attempting to escape. A judge denied him bond, citing the potential threat to public safety and concerns about Roby's mental health. The judge also saw this as an opportunity to address Roby's mental health issues. Even more, Roby also had a risk protection order hearing scheduled the very next month related to the seizure of his firearms. Number 19. Police chief pulled over. The next case we are going to talk about is actually a traffic stop in Molina, Georgia. The driver pulled over was none other than the chief of police of Zebulon. The reason? His license plate is registered to a Dodge Ram truck, but he's driving a black car. What could go wrong here? The officer explains to the chief that the mismatch in the license plate and vehicle was the reason for the stop. The chief argues that the tag is unofficial and not a government tag. He believes the officers are targeting him. Do you think he has a point? The officers try to calm the situation, explaining they are just following procedure. They ran the license plate again and confirmed it was registered to a Dodge Ram. The chief insists the information is wrong and blames the officers for running the plate incorrectly. Is there a mistake, or is something else going on? The officers contact dispatch for more information. The chief becomes frustrated, saying he appreciates the officers' service but could have driven by without being stopped if he hadn't spoken to them. I mean, the audacity. The officers assured the chief they would have pulled him over regardless, as they cannot ignore a mismatched license plate. What are your thoughts about the chief officer disrespecting the police? Number 20. Chief deputy pulled over for speeding. This case we are going to talk about is also a traffic stop, but this time involving a chief deputy. A police officer pulled over a car driven by the chief deputy as he was speeding in a 35 miles per hour zone, going a shocking 96 miles per hour. Speeding coming from a chief deputy. Shocking, right? Despite recognizing that the car is unmarked and belongs to the sheriff's office, the officer decides to pull over the vehicle and issue a speeding ticket. No badge should give someone a free pass. He must have felt like he got hit by a ton of bricks. The officer remains professional throughout the encounter, even ending with a courteous, slow down and have a safe day. What's your thought on this? That's it for today's video. Which one of these did you find the most interesting? And what are your thoughts on police officers wrongly accusing and arresting soldiers? Let me know about your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time.